Thank y'all so much for being here. My name's Trevor Anderson. I go by TA, or Coach TA.
Hi, this is Coach TA.
I'm an alumni of the staff. I came in 2009, spring of 2009, and quickly realized I was in a paradise of anybody that really wants to be in this world. And what I've seen happen between 2009 and now, when I just toured back to campus again today, is unbelievable. I'm from Sarasota, Florida. And to be in this room right now with you all, this is the room that I would be in, that would want to be in right now, right? I would aspire to be in. It's an honor to be in a group, on a team with them, and I'll let Dr. Masson explain more about the comeback team and what we bring to the table.
Thank you, everybody. It's absolutely a privilege and a pleasure to be here. IMG Academy is the pinnacle of American sports science education for kids. This IMG experience for me is yet another circle in my life as I get back to the roots of how I became a neurosurgeon, which was always performance, discipline, process, commitment, toughness, resilience, all the core values that you guys, see, emphasize. One of the key core values that I really started the comeback team with these guys about was what you have. Appreciate the value of collaboration. If you're a world-class PGA golfer and the people we take care of, you've got teams of people who have a singular focus on their recovery, their performance, and ultimately their success in their profession. This environment is like the epitome of that for these teenagers. And one of the things about the comeback that we're so passionate about is how many of the people we take care of are frustrated ex-athletes who let their lives go when their sport went. And along with it, their self-esteem and their confidence and that 3 a.m. darkness of who the hell am I, football's over. I went through that aggressively, and every athlete at some point goes through that, and it's that identity crisis thing. So, I really am most committed to this project to try to remind people to never stop. This whole process of getting your people to sustain a process and a habit build and a confidence and an identity with or without the pinnacle. I know it's all about pinnacle of sports here, but there's this other thing there. It's teaching them for life.
To me, when I walked around today, I was thinking, this place is a cross between a playground and Christmas. Professional, caring people that these athletes have to work with. It's so motivating. And these athletes are going to learn from it. And you are the ones who are going to be making that positive impact in their lives sometime.
The comeback team came together for those reasons. If you think of Dr. Masson in a medical, think of a medical circle, and think of Chuck in more of a clinical circle. Think of TA in a performance circle. Not dissimilar from what we do here at IMG, right? Where we have this interdisciplinary approach where not only do we have 3 separate silos, but the beautiful part about it is how they interconnect, right? How they move together, how they associate with one another. For the good of who? The athlete, or the patient, or the client, or the person that comes. That could be the adult that wants to spend a week and do a week camp here for tennis. Whoever that is, they're going to experience, we make sure when they come here that they touch every single aspect of IMG, right? And they get the full experience. And I think that anytime you get a client or a patient or somebody in front of you, you want them to have a nice, experience. You want to demonstrate hospitality. You want to, not just service. Service is one thing, but hospitality is something else, right? When you bring someone into your home, you want them to experience all the best things that you have to offer, and you want them to feel at home. As I moved on from here to carry out the dreams that I had for, 15, 20 years, of having gym ownership and having my own thing. But I tell you what, I went back. When I left IMG, I left with such an amazing understanding of team camaraderie, integration of services, a comprehensive approach to athletic movement and performance. And you know what? I built some great relationships. Not just the relationships with the individuals, Jeff Dillman, Tara Morgan, Christian Smith. It was the relationships, and others, by the way, but it was relationships with companies. It was all the top executives at Under Armour while we were trying to finalize a deal here to have all this Under Armour on our chest right now. Being able to take that small ownership mentality, apply it to a big environment, and then take the knowledge and understanding and wisdom that you gather from the big environment, sprinkle in the relationships, and take it back to gym ownership, is the reason why Better Every Day, my company, has been successful to this point. We work with NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball. We work with PGA, LPGA Tour players, Olympians, gold medalists, Super Bowl champions, Heisman Trophy winners, Gold Glove. Everybody has come through our facility. And it's not because I'm handsome, and it's not because I have the best equipment at my place, but it's because of strategic relationships, right? Wisdom, knowledge, and know-how, and understanding of what IMG helped me understand about a comprehensive environment of integrated services. And you guys have done an amazing job and continue to do so. You do it on the absolute highest level in the world, and I want to commend you all on that.
Through the course of my career and traveling around the country, I've met many professionals that at one time in their career worked at IMG. And what's interesting is they all have great interpersonal relation skills. Not only technical and knowledge skills, but their interpersonal relation skills. And that's why they're so successful. I've had a pleasure to meet some of you this morning and early afternoon, and there's something different about the people that work here than anywhere else.
It's a culture of performance. I mean, everybody was brought here because they're recognizing the value of the brand, but the brand is the brand because of the culture of performance and the culture of commitment and passion and excellence and process and habits and live by example. And you know, we always have to remind ourselves that this incredible brand, and the brand represents the people that drive the brand. And you guys are the current generation of that. So, you know, kudos to that. Keep that, understand that, embrace it. And what's cool in all the people I've met over the years, whether they're athletes or parents of athletes or ex-executives, sports agents, whatever, is IMG culture goes with them wherever they go.
This is a very significant time. And wherever we go, we have to be like, what's in me for it? How can I leave my mark on this place? We have the best football team in the country here and the best sports programs in the country. Listen, that's the product. What happens behind the scenes is the research, the development, the organization. One thing I learned from Jeff a long time ago is he said, you can't just communicate around here, TA. You can't just communicate. I said, what do you mean? You got to communicate. He said, no. You got to over-communicate. And then once you over-communicate, you've got to over-communicate from there.
So Chuck and Robert, you know, some of the biggest mistakes you're seeing that, you know, again, number one is overuse. I know that for a fact, you know, but other areas that you're seeing there are big mistakes that people are making, and whether it's training, conditioning, you know, or just overload of schedule. So what are some of the biggest mistakes you've seen, you know, in your careers? And TA, you can speak in on that since you are the young G. You know, I want the old Gs to speak because they got a little bit more knowledge.
Particularly around middle school age athletes. I love the fact that they want to play. I love the fact that they want to play multiple sports. But being involved so much with baseball, and these kids play 12 months a year. So I asked them and their parents, why is it that the pros can take off 3 to 4 months out of the year, but you can't take off 3 weeks? Case in point, I remember one kid specifically, a stud of an athlete. You know, he should have been involved with the NCAA now because he was a great-looking kid back then, tall, built like this guy, played 3 sports. Baseball, though, during the 12 months, he went to the West Coast in Tampa for a hitting lesson. He went to the East Coast in Daytona for a pitching lesson, and he played on not only a school team but a travel ball team. Played volleyball and basketball. His mechanics were so-so, but he had limitations in his hip. And he came to me for an elbow issue. When do you take time off? I said, the fact that you're playing volleyball, even though you're away from baseball, your volleyball serve is somewhat similar in the mechanics as throwing a baseball. I said, so you're really not giving yourself that opportunity to recover. So I'm seeing just too much overuse in the respect that they don't take the time for recovery and playing in so many showcases.
Yeah, I'll emphasize that. Rest recovery is number 1, 2, and 3 in youth athletics. I have a perfect example. So here I was a coach of a 14U. At the time in Orlando, there was a Scorpions baseball program, and we had a pretty strong program, and I was one of the coaches on the 14U team. So I'm a board member of Stop Sports Injuries with Jim Andrews. He's one of my mentors in sports ortho. I've been trying to cultivate sports spine. We've got, 19 kids on the roster. We have all these policies about pitch counts and no redundancy and breast recovery. Everything is perfectly in place. Well, we ultimately learned that half of the roster was playing on 5 different travel ball teams. And the parents were a core value to all of that. And there was just not enough, in retrospect, the mistake that we made is we set up our own internal structure for rules and regulations, but we didn't really communicate intelligently with the parents. And it was our failure in that the parents were running wild at home. And I, as a surgeon, as an MD, I get to have a little bit of a power hat and try to tell parents, but parents will fire me if what I say isn't congruent to what their goal for their, future Hall of Fame MLB kid's gonna do, and we all know 99% of these kids aren't gonna be that, but the problem is there's a real mismatch there, and so the biggest mistake by a mile is we could have engaged the parents better, smarter, more cooperatively, more as a team approach, and figured out a way. We never figured it out, and so of those 19 kids, 11 had surgery by the time they graduated high school from overuse.
And what's interesting, at least from you talk about surgery, is in 2015, 56.9% of all elbow surgeries were on teenagers. Okay? And that hasn't stopped. And what's interesting about this kid that I just told you about, I said, if you don't change, I said, and his parents were there, I said, go home, come back to me next week because we had a follow-up appointment. Tell me where you can get some recovery. Cut down on some of your training, cut down on some of your showcases and teams and so on. He cuts out he cuts out 1 day a week. I said, if you don't start doing proper drills and skills and take rest and recovery, you're a recipe for disaster. Well, guess who saw me 3 years later after his elbow surgery? And his career went tank from there. It's not because he didn't listen. It isn't because of what he did or didn't do. It's the fact he didn't take the time and listen.
Well, I think part of this too, it does come back down to the relationships, right? Because Jeff, when you get in well with somebody, a young man and a family, and they trust you, the kid's going to listen to a coach even more sometimes than the parents. So our relationship with our young athletes is so important. If you look at what's happening with sport, imagine a city's population doubling in 1 year. And now there's all these traffic jams and whatnot. Why? Because the infrastructure of the roads isn't enough to support the new cars and the new population and all that. So the actual situation is growing bigger than the infrastructure that can handle it. And what's happening right now with this travel ball and all these different things, I'm starting to see it in football. I got kids now, they want my kid to play in this football team. They already played they're playing a tournament this weekend, a tackle football tournament. It's July. They played one in June too. I was like, what are we doing, man? Like, at what point do we rest? I grew up down the street, and I'm not saying, I know, yeah, I'm older, okay. But baseball season, play baseball. Football season, play football. Soccer season, play soccer. And it's actually why I ended up being a decent athlete, because I was able to have that work, rest, recovery, that ratio was balanced. But the demands that the actual sport is placing on how many games you play, how many times, ask a kid, when's the last time you played basketball when there wasn't a coach, a referee, a uniform, or a scoreboard? That'd be hard to tell you that answer.
And what's been proven is movement variability produces a better athlete, not just that specificity.
And I was going to add, people misinterpret what rest recovery means. It doesn't mean shut down. Even in injury, it doesn't mean shut down. It means adaptive fitness. It means mix it up. Use performance pattern, movement patterns, position and balance opportunities that are going to make you a better athlete long term anyway. Develop something that isn't directly relevant to your sport, but indirectly it's going to make you better at your sport. And so, I see rest recovery cycles as opportunities to expand skills that aren't stereotypically applicable to your sport. As I left organized sports where I had a mission to fulfill, and just became a lifelong dad, athlete, wannabe athlete. I'm 58. I was in 2 Rolex 24s in the last 3 years in a prototype.
He's a race car driver, too.
I play open level masters tennis. I have learned that I'm enjoying my sports life as a 50-something more than I did as a teenager and 20-something, because it's 100% joy, and it's purely for fun, and fun at a high level. And that's the opportunity that sports training and education and development gives. But the key is mixing it up, because every single thing I have done, including surgery and back and forth sports to surgery, has made me better at every single thing I have ever done. And so when people say rest recovery, he wants me to shut down. No, that's just stubborn, dogmatic rebellion against really smart strategies to not only recover from your traumas or your overuse, but also to miss the opportunities to develop things that you wouldn't get in your stereotypical role. We have this thing, get comfortable being uncomfortable. Everybody, doesn't matter how good you are at it, tends to gravitate towards the things that are easiest for you. And when you're a stud athlete, you get stereotypically put into a zone where, well, he has a 98-mile-per-hour fastball. But the opportunity is everywhere else in your weaknesses. And one of the biggest opportunities is to learn how to be comfortable when you're uncomfortable, and use those uncomfortable moments, those things that you're not so good at, and don't hide from them. Embrace them. There's so much of a focus and a lens on you can't show that you're weak in anything anymore. Everything's public, everything's watched. So the reality is your best opportunities come from the things you're not great at.
One of my biggest challenges in my career, over the last 10 years has been, I've worked with world number ones, and I've worked with several people that have been the absolute best in the world at what they do. I've worked with sub 10, 100 meters, some 10-second 100-meter sprinters, and I've seen all-stars and all these different things. But to achieve that level, you have to have a very, very high level of excellence. Like, nobody wakes up in the morning and goes, dang, I didn't even realize I won the Super Bowl. That was weird. How'd that happen? Like, people know when they're good, and they have such a high level of excellence that the biggest challenge is getting them to sit down somewhere. Like, buddy, we need to take a regen day today, man. No, you can't deadlift today. You can't. It's actually going to prevent you from achieving the goal that you're trying to achieve. So then it turns back to the education again. And what IMG does such a great job with is educating our athletes, and not just saying, here's what you need to do. Like we always say, everybody sees the what. Most people can see the what. But we're the why and the how specialists, right? Here's why it's happening, and here's how we're going to fix it. Here's how we're going to address it. Here's how we're going to make it better, right? There's a lot of what specialists. You're doing this. Stop doing that. Why are you doing that? Don't do that. Do this. A lot of what specialists. But we want to be the why and the how specialists, not just in this environment, but for the fitness and wellness community at large. We want to be the why and the how specialists.
And if you want to separate yourself from any other of your colleagues or any other professional in the industry outside of IMG, start understanding the whys. Not just the what's in the hows. The whys unravels the complexities.
Hopefully I set you guys off on a good tangent right here. But, so going back to like the education piece of educating people, and you guys had phrased the question of when was the last time you saw a kid like just go play, right? Like, and why is that, right? It's the monetization of youth athletics. So how much do you feel like, when you were creating those guidelines, did you miss the mark of educating a parent that just because someone has an opportunity for you to pay to go be seen doesn't mean that's necessarily the right one, versus how do you pick your spots so you're not overexposing yourself as that athlete as well? If that makes sense.
I think that's a great question. And when I think, what comes to mind when you ask that is so many young players starting 7th, 8th grade, 9th grade that are going to showcases and they feel they have to be at a particular showcase because it's going to get them on the map. And Part of that is the athlete. I think the athlete's desire. A big part of that, I think, is the parents' need to have their kid be there. Is it for the athlete, or is it for the parent's ego? And so many times, let me just say one more thing. Please tell me your thoughts. I tell the parent, they've got time to develop. Let them work on their drills and skills first. Let them recover. Let them regenerate. And they've got time to be at that key time. When I say key time, meaning in their career. Typically, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you all deal with the showcases and the scheduling, but typically around maybe sophomore, but for sure junior year is the big time for showcases.
Right. Well, yes, absolutely. Probably that rising junior, rising senior, like summers. But how much of that, like, again, to the parents, absolutely a handful are definitely ego-driven, like they think their kid needs to be involved. How many do you think are uninformed and just are well-intentioned parents that don't know better when they see like that, hey, like, I'm Florida baseball, like, we've got a showcase camp, here's like $100, you can come, right? Like,
No, I can answer that. I mean, the parents have a completely different perspective of their kid's future. And there's a lot of dreams, a lot of ego stuff, a lot of financial stuff on the line, and their version of those stories. And, you know, the best you can do is educate. The best you can do is try to lean them to make the smartest decisions towards those goals. Because, you know, and I'm better these days than I was when I was a coach of my kids' travel ball teams. He's 23 now, so it's been a while. But I've learned how to make it their decision, how to make it their choice, how to teach them that, you know, during season that they're going to need to show up at the big events. They're going to need, but don't choose to be involved in the ones out of season, because that's going to limit the length of their durability, whether it's college or theoretically maybe pro. And I think teaching them that it needs to be their strategy and empowering them has been a pivot that I've learned to do. You know, we know that we can't change local high school football, baseball coach, you know, politics. And if you're not here for this, then we're not playing you at all. You know, you lose your spot. It's pandemic. It's the way it is. That's never going to change. But getting the parents out of the off-season stuff, I see as the greatest opportunity. And I've tried to empower them myself.
And I would say that, and I do have my little boy was in here for about 5 minutes. He's 11, and he plays baseball. And what hurts me a little bit is, look, I'm from Sarasota, man. I played baseball at Sarasota High School, like the best program in the country, you know, at the time while we were there. And it's like, man, Sarasota Little League of 12th Street in total, I grew up playing at, and there were 10 teams in each league, and there were 3 leagues, and we were all playing against each other. We had the amazing all-star teams and this amazing environment. It's a ghost town. Cal Ripken is still there. It's Cal Ripken now, but it's a ghost town. And my guy, Ian Desmond, tried to go back and rekindle it. He's been in the community. He quit baseball so he could rekindle things in the community. And you know what? They wouldn't have it. They wouldn't allow it. You know why? Because baseball organizations are businesses now. I also grew up at Sarasota Ringling Redskins off 17th Street right there off Total, okay, where there were 10 teams and everything, and everybody came to the same field and played. I was talking to my friend Tommy Batty, who was coaching at Sarasota High School last year. He's at Outdoor Academy now this year. His son's a star running back at USF. And Tommy said, TA, it's crazy. He said, because if you think about it, Redskins had all these teams and all these kids, and there was a handful of high schools with all these kids. So the pool was big, and the places they had opportunity to go to, there weren't so many. So they were going to go either A, B, or C. Now, you only have like 3, like Sarasota Seminoles, a couple of 3 real regular organizations that all have a handful of teams. They have to raise a bunch of money just to have the league, so you have a less of a pool to draw from, and now you have more schools, right? So there's more schools, less kids. It's driving kids away from the game, and the kids that are in the game are being overworked because, again, the showcases, the events, the combines, the this, the that. Look, man, I've been a member of a lot of these different combines, but you also know that from the education perspective, as a parent, I decided I wasn't going to be a victim to the game with my kid. I said, I'm going to dictate the tempo here. And I think we all have the ability to do that. And I think parents just don't know what they have the ability to do. You know, my kid's playing college football at Columbia, and Don Zalotti told me one day when he was a rising junior, he goes, TA, listen, I want you to consider something. Now, listen, stay with me on this. I said, okay. He goes, you should consider Ivy League. You got a 4.3 student, you got a brilliant kid who can play football, but he's just not jumping off the page as far as it relates. He's 5'10", he's 155 or 160, but he can really play. But that's not what they see when they look at it on paper, is it? He's not going to run a 4.2, but he can really play. Consider the Ivy League. And so I went, Amber, my wife was sitting over there, I said, okay, let's think about this. And we did. And as soon as we started to explore that option, it took us less than 5 minutes. My son was like, yeah, let's have a look. And you know what? Now he's a star on an Ivy League team because we're dictating the tempo, and he's still going to have a chance to go play Division I his last couple of years as a grad transfer somewhere else. But it's us dictating the tempo. If we follow the line, look, we wanted to be in South Carolina with Dillman. But you know what? That wasn't the reality of how they were looking at him. He was undersized, he was small. But you know what? If we can dictate the tempo, there's a lot of avenues as long as we can educate the parents as to what you can do with your child. And starting to create that level of education, I think, is just as important to your point.
Father, we had those real conversations. We did. Like, I didn't sugarcoat it one bit. It was real. And that's the problem. Like, too many times, you know, we as teachers and coaches, we have to filter through the parents' ego because the parents, every kid's an All-American. So you got to break that down. You got to break them down first before you have these real conversations, because that's the biggest barrier you're going to deal with. And that's what I've seen a lot of, and that's where the issues you're seeing and we've seen is that the parents don't want to listen. So we educate the kids, but then you got to really break down the parents. But at a place like IMG, we deal with that all the time.
How much do you see as uninformed versus the type A personality, typically the father?
I think the father thing, type A personality is
Friday Night Lights.
It's
the Friday Night Lights effect.
It's high.
You know,
it's high. And then you got kids that are on the team that are very competitive too, so they want to go to every AAU team and play. You know, I got one kid that's from Miami who went and played on a Texas team for flag football. I'm like, why are you doing that? You're one of the top recruits in the country. You're going to go there and get hurt. It's not going to help you. It's not going to help your brand. So those are challenges you're fighting every single day, and that's what we are challenged with here is the parents. TA, you know that. When you were here the first time, you understand, you know, the uphill battle we fight, but at the same time, you know, we've got to have that relationship with the kid. We got to figure out, and it's kind of hard because you don't have a relationship with the parents. Once you get the relationship with the parents, then it's easy. I have a relationship with you. I can have, TA, I'm going to give you a real conversation here. Is that okay? Yes, tell me. They're not recruiting your son because he's too short.
And I got to tell you, you know, there has to be more parents, I'm not saying like me, but yeah, let's just say it. There has to be more parents like me that are willing to accept that conversation. Yeah. And again, they want their kid to be at Alabama and Florida and all these different places. It doesn't matter what they want. It matters what they want, not what the parents want.
But to your point, the leadership of standing up and telling the parent's going to do what they want. But, you know, no matter what, we can't enable them. And I think the best you can do is not be an enabler to a bad strategy.
But again,
you know?
Again, let's be honest here.
Yeah.
You're in the business. You're in a business, okay?
Right, absolutely.
All right? You piss off a parent, and then you get fired.
Yeah.
All right, so let's
you know what?
Let's just be brutally honest here. You got to be comfortable where you're in your shoes, and that you know what the consequences of what you start and what happened.
It's funny how time and career has a lot
That's
to
what I'm
do
saying.
with
And in
it.
my career now, I really don't care.
Because as I got more
honest
mature, I was able to, you know, over my body of work, I'd have 85% happy parents, and you know, the 15% that were going to fail anyway, I got rid of. Because I wasn't going to say what they wanted me to say. And you learn that as you get older.
Right.
If you do the right thing first,
and you're more comfortable because now you're not worried about your family at home and you're living paycheck to paycheck. You know, and that's the other thing too, the comfort of you know your economic status.
Much harder when you're young and you haven't established yourself.
What I was going to just say is people are going to listen to you for a few reasons. One, you have a presence, first of all.
I have zero presence.
Well, you used to have a presence. But as you've gotten older with more experience and you think you've lost your presence, but you've had the experience to know what is the recipe for success versus not. Versus if you get a coach here who may have even the same technical skills that you do, but he's been in the industry for a couple of years. Who's the parent going to listen to with more respect? They're going to go to somebody who's got the respect. And you can't rush time. So take what you said earlier of the relationship development and the fact that you've got the experience. Of course, it's how you present it as well. But that all comes with experience.
And the one more thing I just want to say is it's about the culture, and that's something Dylan and I have always been big on, is culture, and I think that it's a loosely used word in a lot of scenarios, right? But if you talk about really creating a community of people, right, that believe in something very similar, that's really what the value is going to be. It starts with coaching. You got to have good coaching. Now, whether it's coaching in the weight room or whether it's coaching in mental conditioning, no matter where you're coaching, it has to start with great instruction, great education, great coaching. All right, and then there is the community. The community is the bridge, right? Those are the people. Those are the actual people that you're influencing, right? We have to be able to pour into that bridge. We have to be able to stand on that bridge, not just walk across it. We have to be able to pour and build and reinforce that bridge of the people. And that's how you ultimately get to the destination of culture. And when you walk in, again, you can walk in a place that has nothing fancy, but you can feel an energy and a vibe and an experience when you walk in. It's the first thing he said when he walked into my gym. It's one of the best compliments I ever got. This is like, I love the vibe in this place, baby. And it wasn't because there were pros, there were, but that's not what it was about. It was about the energy. Like, you can tell that everybody's looking around and they're here to not only take something from the place today, but they're here to offer something to the place. And that energy reciprocates and it grows exponentially. And as you start to create that culture, that culture is the wave that you ride to success. And for us, that's what we always want to reinforce between the three of us, is not just culture inside of the environment that we're in the immediate moment, but what culture are we displaying to the world? Like, somebody has to feel safe when they walk up to that bridge to go across it. They have to know, hey, this is a bridge I want to go across. This is a coach I want to play for. This is the person I want to learn from, right? And I think that that's where I've always felt safe in this environment, because I know that there's always somewhere that I can turn and I can learn something from somebody else that has a different level of experience or wisdom than I have.
I've got a unique role in spine surgery, in that most spine surgical problems, 99th percentile North America is, okay, you can't play that anymore, you can't do that job anymore. I'm that opposite guy. I'm one of the few people in the country who, okay, let's create a strategy for you to, 1, be a world-class athlete, 2, be a laborer, 3, whatever your job is, however hard it is, let's find a strategy. And it's more than just surgery. Surgery is a tiny piece of a big puzzle. And a physical performance strategy and rest, recovery, and nutrition and health and habits and sleep and everything is part of that strategy. But I think ultimately, if you can get in your role in their growth and development, if you can become that trusted, authenticated source where you clearly are wanting them to be successful in what they do despite their potential risk or injury or anything else, I think you can navigate it better. And as I've gotten older, I've managed it better. But it's really, you want to keep them going. You want to give them the greatest success, and you have to convey that at the highest level. And sometimes you have to say no now for long-term success and something really special. And it's a hard thing to learn, and it's hard to learn how to message. It's hard to learn how to behaviorally modify humans who are preordained, and they're getting all these inputs from all these local authorities who apparently know best and don't give a damn about the kid's future. And that's hard. And you guys, I'm sure, have to deal with that even more than we do. But that's how I've learned to navigate, is just this consistent drone of, I want your kid to be successful, and this kind of aggression and restraint in marriage. Always aggressive, always restrained, always cautious, Save the 99th percentile and up for when it counts. Pull back a little bit when it doesn't count. That's okay, because you're going for longevity. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
So I'm going to say one thing. I have the utmost respect for you guys, but then Chuck said something earlier, and he said, I'm not going to follow the guidelines. I'm going to make the guidelines. And that's huge. In this world we live in today, there's so many things that we can get accomplished, but everybody wants to follow these guidelines and they don't want to set the guidelines. All right, they don't want to be the guidelines, and they're not challenging other people to extend the guidelines out further. You know, I like to be proactive, not reactive, but in the world, in the industry we're in, there's too many people that are so reactionary that because they're so scared to press the guidelines.
Well, let me give you a great example of that in medicine. Right, so what do you think when you hear the standard of care? Do you think, oh my God, I want that solution? Well, you know what I hear when I hear standard of care? I hear a whole bunch of type A 1%ers who got their degree, got their license to be a doc, and now they want to be average, okay? Because that's what standard of care is. It's the 50th percentile. It's right down in the middle, and that's the guidelines you're talking about. Well, I'm within these boundaries, so I'm clearly in the standard of care.
So I'm gonna, and I hope I don't offend you. You know what I think? You know what I think about doctors? Okay, they're educated people. Okay, they have to make educated decisions. They're not gurus.
I'm a doctor last.
Right,
so
but
good.
they're not gurus. They're not
Yeah,
gurus, and
yeah.
you know, if we don't make educated decisions what's right for our kids and independent decisions, my son would be dead right now. All right, because he went and got some work done at the hospital in Florida, and he was on oxygen because his lungs were disordered, and they put him on the oxygen machine in the wall. It was not pushing oxygen out, and we're telling the nurse there's a problem. And the nurse looks at it and says, no, he just had surgery. No, there's a problem. We put him on the separate oxygen tank, went away, no issues. So, you know, trying to get people to understand, to challenge, to be educated, but don't think everybody's a guru. Understand the why and what you do and everything that you do.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's where, you know, people come to me and say, I'm a doc. Okay, you're a doc. What does that mean? You're educated. All right, but, you know, are you making the right decisions?
Yeah, I'm like you, Jeff. Like I always say, and I always preface it by saying, I don't want to be the anti-doctor here, but listen, man, I'm guilty of this. My son had two lumbar spine surgeries for an infection, a freak infection that he had between his L3, L4 vertebrae. They had to it was shutting his whole lower part of his body down. He couldn't walk, nothing, almost paralyzed from the waist down. They had to go in and they found that he had about 30 cc's of infection between his L3, L4. They had to cut him wide open, infectious disease. Everybody had to get involved. They had to get it out, laminectomy, all this type of stuff. But while we were sitting in the hospital, I knew this guy was putting me on. He's like, well, you know that they're this, and that. I said, sir, I said, with due respect, is there a chance you just have no idea what in the hell you're talking about right now? I told him straight like that, because we're talking about a life and death situation inside of an emergency room. I said, is it true that you just might not know what you're talking about at all? Tell me the truth. And I really don't have the answers to this. I said, well, don't try to act like you do, right? Because, and you're right, Jeff, everybody doesn't know, but there are a handful that we know. The more you look at it, the more you know who you can lean on. And I'll say one more point. You can get on I-75, you can get on I-4, and you're about to get off at an exit, right? And there's a whole line of cars a mile long lined up. Raise your hand if you sit in that long line. Or are you the guy that goes up the side and cuts in right before the thing? That's me. There is so much of society that's going to sit in that line for that mile and creep along. I don't have time for that. I'm trying to get somewhere, right? So I'm going all the way up the side, act like I'm going to go straight. Oh, thank you. Wave out the window and all to act polite, but I'm pulling in, because we don't have time to sit around, right? Not with our family, not with our athletes, not with our employees, our clients, our team members. We don't have time to sit around like that, right? We got to get things done right now.
No, but Jeff, let me address the doctor thing. By no means do I think MD warrants any guru status. I mean, I'll give you a personal example. When I was just a dumb chief resident of neurosurgery in 1995 at UF, my sister Callie, she was at the time all Pac-10 trackster, cross-country runner. I have twin sisters, 10 years younger, and they had just been 6th and 8th in the Pac-10 championship like the week before, and she was diagnosed with a 12-pound right-sided sarcoma of her kidney. And I fired 4 oncologists who kept insisting that she had a 5% 5-year survival. And that was the only messaging they had. And well, we can't do that protocol because she only has a da-da-da-da-da. And it was just this droning ridiculousness of how to not fail because you're going to die anyway. And and our entire mantra the entire time was, we don't live in a world where we're trying to not be the bottom 5%. We're trying to be the top 1%. So how do we get to the top 1%? So, as a human who is into performance and does things my way, it's never been about, ironically, here we come full circle. He introduced me as not like in being called the doc. I'm a human, and I take my profession exceptionally seriously, and I'm extremely independent and rebellious, and like to be innovative. But the point is, you aim to the top. There's an anti-failure culture in America right now. Nobody wants to fail. So everybody's making decisions about not failing. And 100% of my wire and my focus is, okay, how do we succeed with the highest confidence, highest probability? And every situation's different, every human's different, every strategy's different, and I think it's a great point. And by no means am I offended by it. I've lived that mantra my entire career and personal family life. And Callie is alive and well 25 years later. She had the baby. Oh, by the way, she was never, ever, ever going to have a baby, ever, because of her cancer and her chemo and her radiation and the incision from here. She has one, but she had a baby 4 years ago, and that wasn't supposed to happen. Yeah. So the best you can do, and I'm not the guy who tells someone who's paralyzed that they'll never walk again, by the way.
Guys, I'm going to cut the mile-long I-4 line real quick. And so I'd be remiss to not follow up with the carrot you dangled earlier, TA, having like two experts in the room of Chuck, when you talked about the hip internal rotation leading to potential elbow issues, what kind of threshold are you seeing as being that? And then to build off of that, Robert, are you seeing anything similar in terms of, maybe not with throwers, but like hitters, in terms of lack of internal rotation impacting the spine? Like pars fractures.
Yeah, right off the bat, in any swing sport, whether it's golf, baseball, swing, tennis, absolutely internal, external hip rotation and pelvic flexibility is critical to lumbar.
And is it? Are you seeing, a similar threshold, right? Like, so again, I work with baseball, so again, that's something we track, something we've been aware of. For an arm, is it a similar threshold as a hitter, which then helps me blanket some things, or do we need to pay attention to a different number for those different needs?
He's my guru on this, so I'll defer to Chuck.
I would say in the 5 years, I've evaluated 150 or so ball players with elbow injuries. I'm not going to say surgery, but elbow injury, at various ages and various levels. 68.9% of them had less than 30 degrees of internal hip rotation of the opposite hip. Lack of that, you're going to see the relationship from a fascial connection that if you lack internal rotation of the opposite hip, that's going to create excessive force and internal rotation of the opposite shoulder. So it isn't so much coming over the top during the acceleration phase, it's at the deceleration phase when the humerus goes further and faster than the radius and ulna, and that creates secondary valgus force on the elbow. I've seen it over and over and over again, that tight hip, and we'll turn it into hitting. I've seen lumbar issues, I've seen shoulder issues, I've seen bicep. In fact, there's a guy who will be in the Hall of Fame in the next 8 or 9 years, because he probably has another year or two, that had I evaluated him. I said his opposite hip was 15 degrees, possibly, I think it was, somewhere in there, if I recall. I said, not only are you risking a back problem, which he's had some history of, I said, but you're also looking at the way that you release with one arm of a bicep tear. The following season it happened. So I'm seeing a very high correlation of opposite hip tightness, less than 30 degrees, increased risk of elbow injury. Then we'll correlate it to their throwing mechanics. I've also seen less than 60 degrees of external rotation of the same side hip for shoulder problems.
So 30,
remember
30
what? 30 is my magic number. In isolation as well as integrate.
It's Dillman knew a guy and he just shipped us down a bunch, right? Like one of those. So we've had them, like, and so part of it too, right? Like we've done a lot of different things, right? Like probably the biggest, most impactful recent thing that we've gotten into is like FRC driven, like trying to reestablish a hip that way. In the past, I've done like more kind of PRI type resets, but that's tough to do on a huge scale.
So that comes into what can we do as far as movement prep to create calcaneal inversion, forefoot abduction, tibial internal rotation, ankle dorsiflexion, and just simple movement patterns without cleats. Then go ahead and put them on.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you very much.